In this presentation, I will implore you to seek the answers not with me or any other teacher or externally, but to seek the answers within, literally within yourself, from yourself and through yourself. And you might say, well, my answers aren't as good as yours, Fred, because you're an expert on this and this and this. And my response to that is, your soul is expert on everything. Your infinite and eternal self is already expert on everything. And if you can access that higher self, you, then you can have the answers to anything and do not require me to provide answers. I used to have a game in seminars. It was a great game, one of my favorite, where I'd have the whole group sit in a big circle, or if it was a large group training, then there would be many circles in the hall. But if it was a small training, it would be one circle of, say, 20 people or so. And one person would be on the center chair in the middle of the circle to answer everybody's questions. And they'd be playing the role of a very wise person, or playing the role of an enlightened person, or playing the role of a sage, playing the role of a mystic, playing the role of an expert. And from that state that I'd ask them to get into, they'd respond to all the questions. And the longer they stayed in that role and the more questions came, the more they got into flow, they got into it. And their answers became spectacular. So what had previously been people who didn't have much to say, or people who were too timid to say it, or people who sounded boring, suddenly sounded spectacular just because they put themselves into the role of somebody who has the answers. And frankly, have I not done the same? 20 years ago, when I decided to be a reality creation coach, have I not identified with the role as if I had the answers, which I didn't have at the time, being all young and inexperienced, but I identified with the role that I was here to help, that I knew my stuff, and I knew a lot of stuff because I read a lot. I'd been to many trainings, had a lot of certificates on the wall, but at the end of the day, it's an identifying with a role that allowed me to perform as well as I did before I had the experience. Now, 25 years later, or 28 years later, or even 30 years later, I do have the experience. And my role is more real, and it's much, much easier to do it. But if you don't have the experience, you need to play the role. You need to be the part. So that was the exercise back then. Beautiful exercise. And I found a way for us to recreate it now, you and I, you sitting in your place, me sitting here. So the technique is this. I'd like you to write down 5 questions you have. 5 questions about your life, about issues you're facing, about decisions you are facing. 5 questions that you'd ask a very wise person. Pause the recording as you do so. Now, step number 2, I'd like you to rephrase the questions. Ask better questions. Maybe you already did and they don't need to be rephrased, but in most cases, the questions can be improved because most answers are already contained in the question. You know, if you're asking, why am I such a sad person? That's not a good question. That can only give you bad answers. Okay, you can get thousands of bad answers to why am I such a sad or bad or depressed or fat person or whatever. So you rephrase your question. In this case, instead of why am I such a sad person, you'd ask, how could I be a happy person, for example? Or even better, how could I feel and express the parts of me that are already happy? You can always make a question smarter and phrase it in a way that you can get better answers. Not asking you to change the meaning of the question, just to improve it. So put this recording on pause as you upgrade your questions. And now step number 3 is to imagine some famous person or some other person or some well-known person or some expert or some sage or some mystic, and imagine how they might answer each question, to answer each question from that person's perspective. Give that a try. You're using your imagination, wondering, what might this person respond? If they knew the issue, or if they knew me and the issue, how might they answer this? And I'd like you to do that for at least 2 different people. Could be well-known people or people you imagine. Okay, you get 10 answers. 5 from the one person, 5 from the other. Put this recording on pause as you do so. And then finally, step 4, having received the answers from 2 other experts, what are some answers that come to you spontaneously, intuitively, or using common sense? Try to answer the questions yourself, being yourself, just from what you feel or know. Be the questioner and the answerer. Put this recording on pause as you do so. Now you've put quite a lot of awareness into the questions you had, and I'm certain you have much higher quality answers than you did before. You see, I actually use this exercise in some of my coachings. When people ask me too many questions, they've asked me, we're in one session that takes 1 hour, they've already asked me 25 questions, and that shows me they're too much seeking validation and fulfillment externally. And that means I need to help them get back to themselves and their internal system of discernment. It is important that you learn your own discernment of true and false and make your own assessments of reality, of your decisions, of risks, and so forth. Don't be afraid to make decisions. I like to say that a bad decision is better than no decision at all, because a bad decision helps you get answers, helps you learn and grow, whereas no decision puts you in no man's land and you cannot learn and grow. I often give the example of a kid trying to get a remote control to work, trying to get the TV to work, and they press several buttons before they get the right one. They saw their parents do that, but they're not quite sure which is the one. So they make several false decisions before they get the right one. And if they hadn't gone through all those wrong decisions, how could they ever get it right? So you need wrong decisions to eventually get it right. So don't be afraid of your decisions and by extension your answers, that which comes from within. Do not be fully reliant on the outside. Yes, it's good to get the help of experts who have been there. It's great. You can save a lot of time and money and trouble by getting outside advice that is good. But at the same time, you needn't neglect the endless knowledge that comes from within, the wellspring of knowledge. You can also find within. You can find answers within, and I just showed you how. So if you ever complain that you cannot afford coaching with me, then find the answers within. You don't have to afford coaching with me. You can ask yourself and be coached by yourself. You can address the inner coach. You have an inner coach, an inner mentor that is very competent and very powerful. And I trust in that mentor. My name is Fred Dodson. Have a nice day.